The Journey Back, Chapter 17, An Opportunity. Your adventure name. What do you mean? I asked Luke. The smile vanished from his face. I'm not supposed to talk about it. Daddy will be mad. He reminded me so much of Hank right then that I put both my hands on his shoulders and squeezed them. Look at me, I said. It's no big deal. Everybody's got secrets, right? Unsure, Luke nodded weakly. So forget it. But Luke didn't look convinced. Hey, come on, let's read a chapter in that dog book you were reading last night with your dad. Tornado? Yeah. Luke loved the story about a dog that dropped out of the sky. He reached into the milk crate by his bed to get the book and put his glasses back on. I didn't ask him any more about his adventure name, but you can bet your boots I filed away this information. On the second day that Woody didn't come back, I had to start thinking serious about things. My ankle and the poison ivy were better, and I still wanted to get home, but not while the police were staking out my family. Besides, what if Luke's father didn't come back? Someone had to look out for the kid. First thing I did, whenever Luke was down to the bathhouse by himself or taking Buddy for a walk, I'd rush into the tent and rifle through stuff. I was looking for money mostly. Money so we could buy food. When I come across a yellow envelope in the bottom of Woody's duffel bag. Inside was the title to his truck, a couple receipts, and one other thing. A license. It was a Texas license, and it had a picture of Woody that didn't look like Woody. I mean, you could tell it was him, the round cheeks, the high forehead, the foxy eyes, but in this license picture, he had short brown hair and was clean-shaved. The Woody I knew had longish blonde hair and a full beard, and the name on the license was not Sherwood Woody Hawkins like he told me. It was Glenn David Hardesty. Huh. I wondered what that was all about. I put the license back, covered up the envelope with clothes, and kept looking for money. But there wasn't any. Worse come to worse, I still had the $3 in my pocket, and Luke had the change from his 20. He said it was all he had, but altogether, I hoped our cash would be enough for a jar of peanut butter, a loaf of bread, some milk, and a bag of ice. Other than that, Luke and me would have to survive on our own for a while. Nora worked all weekend at the horse farm, but when she stopped by on Monday, I asked if her mother could get us that food. She frowned. Do you have the money? She won't just buy it. Yeah, I think I have enough. It's just that every penny counts, she said. She's trying hard to save up enough so we can get an apartment before winter. Sure, I understand, I said. I wasn't asking for free food. But if you get desperate, tell me, okay? I could probably sneak you guys some cereal or a couple sandwiches or something. Thanks, I told her. But I didn't want to go begging from Nora. I was starting to really like her, and I didn't want her to feel sorry for me. The other thing is that I'd like to look into that job at the horse farm. She perked up. Great! Next weekend, come with me. We were sitting at our picnic table after Luke and I had supper of leftover baked beans and half each of a stale, grilled toasted burger roll. It was getting dark earlier, so Luke was doing his homework under a lantern in the tent, while Nora and I propped up a flashlight on a bag of napkins and started a card game. Where do you think Woody is? I asked her. I was genuinely concerned. Plus, I hated being hungry again. Beats me, she said, dealing out the cards. One time this summer, he gambled all night at the casinos in Charlestown. But don't worry, he'll be back. I picked up my cards. Maybe we need to call him on your cell phone. She shook her head. I don't have his number. Plus, my cell's not charged. Didn't she say that before? A couple of times my mom and I had to take care of Luke when she was late getting home. Nora went on, still arranging the cards in her hand. He figures you're here now, and he knows you won't call the police. All of a sudden, the loud squeal of brakes and a big thump stopped our conversation. The sound was close, like maybe on the main road into camp. A woman screamed. Luke came running out of the tent. What was that? Nora and I both set down our cards. I grabbed the flashlight and we three tore down the dirt road, me still favoring that ankle and doing sort of a run/hop, with Buddy right beside us. Right off, we saw a car sideways off the road in a ditch, its lights still on, and smoke pouring out of the engine. 2 people stood in the road. "We're all right," one of them called out. Other people had gathered and were staring into the bushes. When we got close, we saw that the car had hit a deer. A doe it looked like, and the animal was struggling to get up. Buddy lurched forward and started barking, so Luke kneeled down and put his arms around him to hold him back. A little boy stepped toward the deer, reaching out his hand like he wanted to pet it or help it, and I shouted a warning. "Don't! The deer is alive, and those front feet can tear you into shreds." A woman snatched the young boy back, and a couple minutes later, we all watched as the deer laid down its head and took its last breath. Nora had her hand over her mouth. There were tears in her eyes. Even Luke, still holding back Buddy, looked about ready to cry. I glanced around at the crowd and didn't quite get it. It was too bad what happened for sure. But while they all saw some tearful scene, I saw an opportunity. At least 40 pounds of free, fresh venison. Right when I really needed it. The man who hit the deer was on his cell phone calling for a tow truck, and most of the people watching started to leave. "Let's go," Nora said, touching my arm. "Poor deer," Luke added. "What will happen to it?" The police will probably come in the morning and take it," Nora told him. "Are you kidding me?" I asked. "No one's going to claim it?" "Claim the deer?" Nora asked. "Yeah." "For what?" "For meat," I exclaimed. Every fall since I was 9 years old, I'd been out deer hunting with my friend and his uncle. Brady and I, we took the hunter safety course together, and my mother signed the papers so I could hunt legal. She knew how good the venison tasted. My mother cooked it about 10 different ways. She did occasionally cook something, and it fed us for weeks. I decided to act. "Look," I said quietly to Nora and Luke, "will you help me?" Nora's eyes grew big. "What do we have to do?" "Just help me pull the deer into the little clearing," I said. "And Luke, keep a hold of Buddy and don't let him go, you hear?" First, I approached the deer from the rear and poked it with a stick to be sure it was dead. The deer was heavy, and it took 2 of us hauling together to move it to a small, level clearing off the road. I handed the flashlight to Nora. "Hold the light on the deer's belly for me, will ya?" While Nora held the flashlight, I pulled out the jackknife, kneeled in front of the deer, and went to work. I glanced up once and caught the horrified look on Luke's face. "You might not want to watch this," I warned him. But Nora kneeled beside me, holding the light, and seemed real interested as I reached deep inside the deer and groped with my hands until I found what I needed to find and cut through it with a jackknife. At that point, all the organs inside the deer were freed from the body, and I was able to roll everything out onto the ground. Buddy whined, and I'm sure Luke had to tighten his hold. "Wow," Nora said. "That's the peritoneum, the thin membrane that covers all those organs. We learned it in biology." She reached out to touch it. "I didn't know the name," I said. "Now what?" Nora whispered. "Where's the blood?" Luke piped up. "How come it doesn't smell?" A stranger answered, "There's not much blood 'cause this here kid did one heck of a job dressing the deer." We all turned to see an older guy who had been standing there watching. "Hats off to you, boy. I used to hunt years ago, and I ain't never seen anyone do as neat a job as you." "Thanks," I said, turning to Luke. I explained, "The only reason it would smell is if I accidentally opened the stomach. Then it would stink to high heaven." The stranger laughed. "You're right on that." Luke wrinkled his nose. After finishing, I wiped my hands off best I could on some nearby grass. Then Nora and I stood up, and I cleaned the jackknife off on my pant leg. "Next thing we need to do is get this deer back up to the campsite and hang it up." "Hang it up?" Luke asked. "To cool off the meat and let it bleed out," I told him. I turned to Nora. "Do you know anyone who has a wheelbarrow? I'm going to need a plastic bag, too." "You're going to butcher this deer?" she asked. "Who do you think was going to do it? Santa Claus?" "Is deer meat good?" Luke wanted to know. "Plenty good," I told him. "Like beef, only a little stronger. You just wait and see." When Nora returned with what I needed, I pushed aside the deer's innards, cut out the liver, and put it in the plastic bag. "Here," I told Luke. "Your job's to carry this back and not let Buddy get it." Luke held it at arm's length. What are you going to do with that? I had to laugh. I'm going to eat it. Fresh deer liver? Are you kidding me? If you're extra good, I might even let you have a piece. Ew, he said, but I bet to myself that Luke would find it mighty tasty. If not, then I'd give his share to Buddy. On the count of 3, Nora and I hefted the dough into the wheelbarrow. It must have weighed 120 pounds or so. Limping, I wheeled it back to the campsite while Nora walked alongside and made sure the deer didn't fall off. Luke pulled on my shirt. What about all that stuff? He asked. I stopped and looked back at the shiny innards laying in the woods behind us. Don't worry, I told him. The raccoons, the possums, the fox, they'll have a feast tonight. Won't be a speck of deer gut left in the morning. Luke looked disgusted and kept glancing back at it while we walked. I had to smile, remembering the first time I watched Brady's uncle field dress a deer. Guess it's something you never forget. And I did find it gross, but just part of life. But I didn't find it gross, just part of life. Waste not, want not, my grandpa used to say. Back at the campsite, I picked out a couple trees and found myself about a 4-foot-long, skinny but sturdy stick on the ground. There's a place on the deer near a tendon on the hind leg where you can cut a hole and run a stick through. A couple campers had stopped to watch, so once I got the stick through, I asked them to help me hoist the deer up and set the ends of the stick in 2 different trees so the deer could hang upside down. With Nora holding a flashlight on the trees, we got the job done. Butt up, head down, I told Luke, so the blood can drain out. He seemed scared. How much blood? I shrugged. Not that much, maybe a pint. What are you going to do with all that meat? A guy asked. Don't have no way to freeze this meat, and the weather's not cool enough to leave it hanging, so tomorrow I'm going to cut it up. Come around in the morning and spread the word, I said. Bring a plastic bag or something to wrap up the meat. After we had that deer hanging up high enough to be out of critter reach, I went down to the river and felt around the water's edge for a smooth, flat stone and brought it back to the campsite. Nora had a fire going like I asked. The first thing I did, I put the deer liver in the big iron skillet Woody had, added a little oil, and started cooking it up. Nora found an onion and threw slices of it into the pan, too. We had to tie Buddy inside the big tent because he was barking his head off, but I'd figured he'd calm down a bit. While the liver fried, I sat on those rickety aluminum chairs, and in the light of the fire, spit on the smooth rock I'd found and started sharpening the edges of the jackknife by rubbing the blade against the stone in a swirling motion. Okay, I'm like flabbergasted, Nora said, sitting in the chair beside me. I have never seen anyone cut up a deer like that. It's called a field dressing, I reminded her. Field dressing. Amazing. I mean, I could see all the organs, everything. It was fascinating. You'd make a good hunter then, I told her. Or a doctor, she suggested. You think? I smiled at her. Sure, or a doctor. I knew that was her dream. Really, I was impressed, she said. When I looked over at her, she smiled at me in a way that was different, more real somehow. My face grew warm as I turned my attention back to the blade I was sharpening. Compared to the first time I met Nora, when she seemed to think I was pretty stupid, I feel like now she had some genuine respect for me. By the time I had the knife good and sharp, the meat was done. Hey, Luke, I called. Come try some of this liver. But I never did get an answer from him. The next morning, when Woody still wasn't back, Luke and Nora had to go to school. By myself, I pushed the picnic table over by the hanging deer so I could stand on top of it to do the butchering. I tied up Buddy so he wouldn't go crazy. Then I took my sharpened jackknife and started cutting from the legs on down, easing the hide off. As I worked, a couple people started to come around. It wasn't long before I had the entire hide off the deer and a small crowd watching. Somebody called out that he'd give me $5 for the hide. You got it, I said. Wasn't anything else I could do with it. I knew most of the people watching there were for a meat handout, and I was going to be good on my word. But first, I cut a few pieces of venison for not only Luke and me, but Nora and her mom, too. I wrapped the meat in a plastic bag and nestled it at the bottom of the cooler under all the ice we had left. Standing back on the table, I went to work quartering the deer and offered up the hindquarters to several women who had been watching me from the get-go. The top is real good, I told them. Toward the bottom, it'll get tough. I handed out other chunks of venison from the shoulder area. That's excellent for a roast, I told folks. Don't overcook it. If you do, you'll hate it. It'll be dry and tough. You want it just barely pink inside. Still, more people came by and asked if I had anything left, so I cut as much meat off the neck as possible and suggested it was good for a stew or making deer sausage. Mix in a little sage or some salt and pepper, I said. How about chili, a woman asked. Would it make good chili meat? Great idea, I replied. Barbecue, too. It was wonderful biting into fresh venison for dinner that night. Good to have a real meal for once, and one that I provided. But let me tell you, it was far nicer feeling giving most of that meat away. I just hoped I wouldn't be needing more of it myself. And that is the end of chapter 17.